Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
So growing up, my dad would sometimes talk to people that he didn't know and introduce himself or ask questions, and it would embarrass us sometimes. But we sometimes learned that he talked to people and learned something interesting about them. My mom, on the other hand, was more quiet. She's a great listener. She could always listen to anyone's story. And so I like to think that I'm a perfect combination of those two people. And I get so excited to ask questions and learn things about people and showcase people in our community. So thank you all for being here. I'd like to introduce today's guest. Because our town is so small, we see familiar faces around town. And it's easy not to know the people behind those faces. And so today's guest is someone that I've seen, for example, at Agricole getting coffee, and we exchanged some pleasantries, but really didn't know each other until I sat down with him and got to know his story. And I think what was even more impactful than that was talking to his friends and hearing what his friends had to say about him and realizing what a pillar of the community he is. So join me in welcoming Jim Randolph. Thank you for being here. Let's start chronologically, and we can, if you have something where you want to go, we can take it that way. But I thought we'd start out with your early life, that you grew up in Mount Clemens.
Actually, before that, my first years were in Yellow Springs, Ohio. My parents were at Antioch College in Xenia, and they lived in married housing at the time. Married housing without kids were trailers, portable trailers, with communal facilities down the road. I think I was probably the most planned out baby ever, because when I showed up, they got to move into a real little building with its own bathroom. So we spent 2 years there. Of interest, at least it's my only real trivia question, is Rod Serling and his wife were neighbors, and they used to babysit me. When I was Rod too. Yeah, so whether that explains part of my behavior, I don't know whether he tested out scary stories, whatever. But anyway, yes, indeed. Then when I was 2, they moved back to Mount Clemens, a little north of Detroit. That's where my family was from, and I spent my formative years there up through high school.
So only child.
Yep.
And your mom and dad, what do they do for professions?
My father worked for Michigan Consolidated Gas Company. He was manager of finance. Never quite understood what that meant, although I think he managed the cash float the company had between the time period between paying your bill and them paying their bills. I think he fiddled around with that float. My mother had a number of odd jobs, but for the most part, she was a stay-at-home mom. So.
And I remember you telling me that you started your passion of cooking with your mom in the kitchen.
Indeed, cooking was a big deal. Even at that point in my life, a lot of time was spent in the kitchen, both with my mother and my grandparents. Both sets were around a lot. And we just always congregated in the kitchen. And I learned cooking skills. I learned comfort in the kitchen. That was the biggest thing. So.
And as we'll hear, that that it continues today.
Yes, yes.
It's a big part of your life.
Yep.
So moving along, you went to U of M, and I'm wondering how you made that choice, or was that choice made for you?
In 1958, my father took me to my first Michigan football game, and I loved it. Earlier, apparently when I was quite young, I used to root for Ohio State because I knew I was born in Ohio, and that pissed my dad off. He made it very clear that if I ever wanted to go to a Michigan game, I had better change my allegiance. So I did. So indeed, he took me to games off and on for about 8 years, and partway through high school, it became apparent to me that that was the only place I wanted to go. So I applied, fortunately was accepted, and indeed went off after high school to U of M.
In some ways, never left, right?
True.
So you are a season ticket holder of hockey, basketball, and football.
Yes.
So that got into your blood a long time ago and has stayed there.
Indeed, had season football tickets since '66, season basketball tickets since '70, season hockey tickets off and on. We used other people's tickets for a lot of times. I think in our own names, we've had our tickets, current tickets, for maybe 25 years.
So 2 of the 3 are number 1 right now, or number 1, 2, or 3 in the country, the hockey and basketball.
It's fun, but it's early in the season, so it's of no consequence.
Yeah, it's exciting though. It's
Better than the other end.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. So your wife Mary was part of a friend group at that time.
It would have been, I don't know, the third year at U of M. There were 4 or 5, depending on the night, guys staying in one apartment, and Mary and some friends were in a different apartment in the same complex. We got to know each other, the 2 groups got together, and the 8 of us, 9 of us hung out together an awful lot. Partway through our senior year, Mary and I went out to dinner. The Village Bell on South U. On the way home, would have been in January, I think. It's pretty snowy. On the way home, we got into a discussion about the log quad and the peaks at the top and whether they were cupolas or turrets. Now, I would say that alcohol was surely involved back at the Village Bell, and we were wandering back to the apartments when we got into this discussion. So we laid down on the president's home front yard in the snow and spent maybe an hour discussing whether they were turrets or cupolas. I'm not sure which of us was right. I actually don't recall which one either of us picked, which position we defended. But after that night, it became apparent that we were better than just good friends. So
That was great.
yeah,
If you start out a story saying it's about turrets and cupolas, it doesn't sound very romantic.
yeah.
But it's cool how you guys, that's how you started.
Yeah. So, yeah, shortly thereafter, she sent me a Valentine's card, and that sealed the deal.
So moving along, you and Mary had 2 boys, and
Yes.
you lived in the Willow Run area. So I don't know if there's anything you want to share about your boys or living in that area?
We built a house, had a house built in a subdivision out north of Ypsilanti. Had a great first few years there, in part because every family there was alike. There was a house every 15 feet. Every house had 2.3 kids. There were big wheels on the sidewalks everywhere. And it was a great community for the first few years because, as I say, everybody was in a like circumstance, relatively the same age, relatively new at their job. We had a great babysitting co-op, a dinner co-op, and it was a really good time. After a few years of that, we decided that we ought to look for a different lifestyle, something out in the country where we weren't quite so close to everybody. And we spent weekends driving around to all the small communities in the Ann Arbor periphery. At that time, I had had a pretty seemingly permanent job at U of M, so we wanted to stay in the area. Came to Chelsea, and the boys commented when we were downtown that nobody locked their bikes here because they were just all up on their kickstands downtown. And that seemed like a pretty positive social comment about a community. So we narrowed our search to the Chelsea area, found a 16-acre farm and actually vacant piece of land and bought it. Built a house in 85 and 86 and been there ever since.
So that's great. You know, we know that Chelsea's a great place. When you hear a story like that from your son saying they don't lock their bikes around here, it's kind of makes it even more special than we think it is.
It's funny, I had a good friend passed several years ago, a guy named Marty Topin. He and I worked together. He was one of the pillars of the Chelsea community, and he said when we built the house in Ypsilanti that I was going to regret not moving to Chelsea in the first place. So I acknowledged in 85 and 86 that he was right, and albeit late, we moved to Chelsea.
So going back in time, before you started your job at U of M, once again, cooking remained a passion, and you were, as I understand it, a cook at a Greasy Spoon after graduation, and that's where you were happy while Mary was moving into a permanent job at U of M.
I think in junior year I started cooking. I worked in a kitchen in a dormitory, cooking for 1,500. So I learned how to put giant kettles of food together to satisfy people. In the following summer, I got a job at a sorority in the kitchen. That was a really nice job, for all the obvious reasons. And then when we graduated, indeed, Mary already had a job at the university. We graduated together, and she had been a work-study student with one of the units at the university, and they hired her on. I found I was unable to find a real job, so I worked at a Greasy Spoon out on Washtenaw, doing burgers and fries. Her boss at the time was very worried that I might find a job elsewhere and move away. So he was my biggest coaching advocate, job advocate, and found me a job on campus. It worked out reasonably well. I stayed in that same office for 39 years. So
It's amazing.
I was either very happy there or wildly unmarketable. I'm not sure which.
So you became known as NIH Jim.
Yes.
And so it stands for National Institute of Health. Explain to us maybe as simply as I can understand what you did.
So our office was responsible for assisting faculty find money from the government to do research, government and private foundations and corporations and whatnot. I had been there a number of years, and we had a departure, and I was asked if I would like to take over the big account, and that was NIH, because at the time, NIH gave more money to the university than all the other sponsors combined. So I became NIH Jim. It was my job to understand the process, exactly how it worked. I knew nothing about the science, and that was fine. But if I understood how the game was played and what gets you disqualified, apparently a lot of people thought that was a valuable skill. So that's what I focused on. When the internet came along, and and it became time to have email accounts. Everybody had to come up with a unique name in the university system. And all the permutations of my name had already been taken by the blasted students. So I just decided to become NIHJIM, and that became my handle at the university, and both there and with folks at NIH, because I outlasted many of the people I dealt with for the 25 years or so that I interacted with them. So
it's amazing tenure of working on one particular area.
It was extremely rewarding because I never lost sight of the fact that two things. When a faculty member prepares a grant application and tries to get it out of the university, there's an enormous run of administrators who ask them questions, tell them to make changes, and generally make their life difficult. I was the last one because I signed every application that left the university, and I made it my job not to be an asshole. I figured they'd had enough harassment at that point that they didn't need it from me. The other rewarding part of the job for me was recognizing that essentially every faculty member that came to my office was one of the world's brightest people in their field. I never lost sight of that fact. And if they had a moment, I'd ask them to give me 5 minutes in lay terms what they did. Their face brightened. They talked for 20 minutes. I never understood a word they said. But it was just delightful listening to them because somebody wanted to know what they were doing. So that was great. And indeed, even though I retired at a relatively early age, I loved the job. I loved interacting with the faculty. And as I say, I never lost sight of the fact that I got to not be a jerk to a lot of people.
That's a tremendous accomplishment. I'm wondering if they ever quantified over your career the amount of dollars that you were responsible for, or you signed for.
Yeah, I'm going to say I never took responsibility for anything, but it's hard to say right now. University gets, I think when I left, it was somewhere in the order of $300-400 million a year. It's, I know it went up over $1 billion, but with the current administration, and I won't go there at the moment, that might be back under $1 billion a year. But it's a fair chunk of change.
One of your friends told me that you, a couple things about this, that you developed a process of dotting the I's and crossing the T's to ensure success.
So I wanted to make certain that the only reason a faculty member wasn't given a grant was bad science. Everything else I could coach them on or correct myself, or whether it was silly things like page limitations or whatever it might be. There are a million reasons why your application might not get funded, only a couple of which related to the science. So I just made it my job to make sure that they never screwed up on all those other administrative things.
So important. I can see a clinician not focusing on those things that you're talking about.
Yeah, I never ran into a faculty member who didn't have a problem with page limitations. When I was going through college, they said, keep it under 5 pages. I always struggled to get to the second page. Faculty, on the other hand, have a very difficult time controlling their writing. So,
one of your friends also said you were very respected by clinicians and administration over your 39 years. So,
I had my share of friends, that's for sure.
That is an accomplishment. So you closed your work chapter and you leaned into giving back to the community. I have called you in my notes, you turned into Chelsea Jim from NIH Jim.
Yeah, it's interesting. My license plate, the boys got it for me to start with, was NIH Jim. And when I retired, I gave up the license plate. And I thought about changing my unique name to not NIH Jim or plain, I never did. But indeed, in my retirement, my goal was to become a Chelseaite. In my working years, I think my head was in Ann Arbor probably 6 days a week. And in the community here in which we lived, once the boys left school, I didn't get involved in anything. And we would go downtown to Sounds and Sights, and dozens of people knew Mary. Nobody knew me other than, oh, you're Mary's husband, only after introductions. So I made it my job in retirement to become a Chelseaite, so that when we go downtown together, an equal number of people know both of us. So,
Well, and boy, did you ever, Lee Manning. So you mentioned the Yellow Door, which I did a little research. The Yellow Door was Thursdays.
okay.
So Yellow Door was a fundraiser in Chelsea. When do you think this was? Like 20 years ago, maybe?
Well, it would have been 2010, probably.
Okay. So the Warfrings on Harrison, they had a house with a Yellow Door, and they would host a Thursday morning fundraiser, which was basically cooking, and then the proceeds went to Faith in Action. At least that's what I found out on the internet. So you, I don't know if this is your first venture, but you heard about this and went to check it out.
After I retired, I spent almost a year doing nothing. I read, just vegetated, didn't tie my shoes, the normal kind of retirement reaction. When I decided after a year that it was time to get up and do something, I had read about Yellow Door probably in the paid newspaper, so I went. Had a good time, met lots of new people. One person I met there was involved with CRC, Chelsea Retirement Community, and we got talking, and she learned I was retired, and she said they wanted to start a new project there of making wooden pens, ballpoint pens. Would I be interested? And I wasn't a woodworker by any stretch, but I said sure. So in 2011, I guess it was, we started this project. I still do it. I have 2 classes there every week, and we make wooden ballpoint pens with residents, all by hand. We don't use lathes or anything else, just gritty sandpaper on pieces of 2x4. My guess is we've made somewhere around 1,500 in the time I've done it. They keep them all. It's financed partly by me and partly by CRC. And they give them away, the residents make them, give them away as gifts to their family and others. So.
It sounds so simple, but it's probably very rewarding for them to participate in making that.
Indeed, it was originally, the idea was there were not very many projects for male residents. The women seem to have a lot of social interaction, but the men not so much. Right now, my groups are dominated by women. They've taken that over too. And that's fine.
And you're back in the sorority, is that what you said?
A lot of them haven't made anything like this ever in their life, and they find it extremely rewarding. And I've had multiple residents there, over 100 years old, make them. I've had 2 women that were legally blind, but they could feel the process, and they were just as proud when they finished their pens as if they could see them themselves. So indeed, I still get a kick out of handing over the pens to each one. So
That's neat. You have one?
yeah, you asked me. I should set out for so.
Yes.
There.
Oh, I had no idea. I pictured something much more rudimentary.
Yeah.
So this is like a fancy pen.
That's I can't recall whether it's South African or South American. Wood called the dog. It's orange. It's very unique wood. So, as I say, we've made somewhere around 1,500 of them so far.
So I wanted, this is a whole conversation in itself, but you got to tell everyone about the second most important woman to you.
I won't start off with that line. Somewhere around 2011 is when stuff started happening. Mary came home and said that Trin Pfeiffer, the then CEO, director of the Senior Center, asked if her husband, Jim, was the same Jim Randolph that used to work at the university. And she said yes. Turned out Trin and I worked professionally together in the early 2000s when I was at the university and she was at a small nonprofit that did renal research in Ann Arbor. She said that I needed to get involved in the center, so I became a member. I'd been here for a very short time, and she said, Jim, you need to get on the board. So I said, okay. I've been on the board a very short time, and Trin said, Jim, you need to be our vice president. I did my one-year stint as vice president, and Trin said, Jim, you need to be president. We were nearing the end of the first year of my term, and she said, Jim, you need to stay on for a second year. So I said, okay. Indeed, one of the times I introduced Trin at a speaking engagement, I introduced her as the second most important woman in my life. And then I qualified it by saying that I have no sisters, I have no daughters, my mother has passed, and my mother-in-law has passed. So that it was fair to say that somebody other than a relative could be second. But indeed, she was extremely influential, frankly, on both of our lives. She was a great friend, but she changed me in a lot of ways to do away with my fear of raising my hand and volunteering, getting involved in things, doing a lot more public speaking. She was very influential for me. So I think during our tenure here, my tenure on the board, it was an exceptionally, I guess I'd call it transformative time for the Senior Center, in my opinion. And I can't take credit for that. We had Trin and we had a great board. I used to talk to Trin about, she was always focused on membership, getting more members. I was much more focused on our constituents. And I thought of that as the whole sort of surrounding senior community, irrespective of whether or not they were a member. And I said, we need to focus more on them while taking care of the paid membership. During that time, we created the Intergenerational Garden, which still involved mostly seniors from the center, but it was a great partnership with the school district. Both the preschool and then the summer campers. And together, Mary and I managed that for the first 8 years of its existence. We created the Chelsea Community Senior Services Program here, C2S2, which is now the umbrella name for a bunch of other programs that are really important in that they largely serve non-members. Focus is on non-members. Back in 2011, we were having discussions with Silver Maples about joining an organization called Village to Village. That was a membership organization. Residents who really were determined to age in place paid an annual membership fee for services, whether they be references to shovel snow, change a light bulb, whatever it might be, to deliver meals, any other, all imaginable things, provide transportation services. Trin and I were determined to not make it fee-based, to make it free. Trin wrote a grant application to the Chelsea Community Foundation. We got a grant for $25,000, and partway through the year, it became apparent that this was going to be a wildly successful program, at least to me. So I started using my bully pulpit as the president at the time to say next year it's going to be part of our permanent budget. So from that day on, C2S2 was integral to the senior center. At the same time, the county had already been funding congregate meals here, but was doing Meals on Wheels through Faith in Action. And the county approached the senior center asking, would we consider taking over management of both programs? And I just said that's another perfect example of this community connectedness that I was looking for. So we did, and indeed, Meals on Wheels is still an ongoing program here. So I think those three things were hugely transformative in the way the senior center thought about things and thought about its role in the community. So.
I remember you saying that you were not focused on gaining more members, you were connectedness was the word that you said many times to me.
I always told Trent that I couldn't care less about the number of paid memberships we had. John and Mimi know that in my tenure with Kiwanis, when I was president there, I didn't care much about how many paid memberships we had. I was much more concerned with that sort of sphere of friends on the periphery that helped us get things accomplished, irrespective of whether they paid dues. Sort of as long as we had the minimum number of dues payers to keep us legal with the hierarchy of Kiwanis, I was satisfied with that.
So you're consistent with that.
Yeah.
Just go back to the intergenerational garden. How did that start? Was it, I mean, I assume that Trin was a gardener.
Trin was a gardener.
I know you're a cook, so I'm not.
Said Trin was a gardener. She wanted to have a program that partnered with the school. And at least originally, we imagined that we would have high school kids over and all levels, K-12 kids over working all the time. Turned out that it didn't work out that way so well, but she had the idea, and then we started talking to the school district. They gave us the plot of land, 85 by 85, that fortuitously, at least then, was sort of adjacent to both the senior center and the preschool.
Yes.
So it was perfect for that relationship. We started off, killing off the sod, trying to kill off the weeds, building a hoop house, building beds. Got some grant money from the Five Healthy Towns Foundation, I think upwards of $10,000 originally, to build all the boxes in the hoop house and whatnot. So, and it took off from there. After a few years, we established a relationship with summer camp group, Kabika, and we did gardening classes and cooking classes every week with them. So,
Once again, cooking.
It was fun having 35 or 40 crazed 6-year-olds in a kitchen with knives and other implements of destruction. We went through a lot of Band-Aids, but we had it right. I didn't care if they learned how to be cooks. I wanted them to be comfortable in the kitchen so that they knew how to work a can opener, all the kinds of things that their parents never let them do. I wanted them to do, including handling very large, very sharp knives, because they're less likely to cut themselves with a large, sharp knife than a really small, dull one. So we taught them kitchen skills. We made things. I taught them to read labels on groceries. We made mayonnaise, for example, with oil and eggs and herbs. And then I'd have them read the label on the back of the mayonnaise jar. And indeed, there were all manner of other ingredients in there. And the kids knew that they didn't put in the mayonnaise they just made. We made salad dressing, same thing. Hold the jar up, remember what you just put in the bowl. taught them that potatoes came from underground, not on trees. It was a blast. The kids were terrific fun. And we made a lot of strange things. I tried to have them taste things that they might not like, but likely that they weren't going to get exposed to at home. So we made a lot of weird things. That was mostly Trin's doing. We did a lot of bizarre Asian dishes. Some were awful, but that's okay. So.
This is related that you went on a trip with Trin to Vietnam, I believe. And then also you seek out senior centers when you travel. Those two may not be related, but we're under the category of travel, so.
Indeed, Trin, she and her family escaped Vietnam when she was 5?
6.
6
is what I was told.
Okay. Managed to end up in America and obviously developed a great life here. All her siblings graduated from college, all with advanced degrees. Pretty amazing family. Trin had a desire to go back and visit her home country. And in 2018, maybe, she organized a trip with a cruise through Cambodia that ended up in a trip through Vietnam. And Mary and I went, Gene Vargas went. It was amazing, in part to see the reaction she had. She and her sister Twee were on the trip, and just to see their reaction to being back there for the first time, meeting many relatives for the first time, or at least the first time in 40 years. It was a great experience. The other big part of that trip, at least for me, was I'm a product of the resumption of the draft, the military draft. And I was a pretty staunch pacifist in 69, 70. I had a very draftable number. Went down for my induction physical, and Mary and I had already talked about if I got into the Army, I would try to get into the Cook's program. If that failed, I would try to get into the band program there because I played drums for 8 years. And failing that, we would probably go to Canada because I just felt that strongly about it. Perhaps one of the second luckiest things in my life is I got down for my induction physical and I got rejected. I had crummy feet. So even today when I have trouble walking, I don't curse my feet at all. I still thank them for what they gave me. But being in Vietnam and seeing their perspective on the American conflict, and even just that, it wasn't the Vietnam War, of course it wasn't the Vietnam War to them, it was the American conflict. And seeing their perspective and talking to the residents and talking to or visiting their museums, it just gave me a whole different perspective on that, and it reminded me that, at least in my own mind, I was right with my own convictions at that time. I had started to have self-doubts through the years that maybe I didn't do the right thing, maybe I should have served. That resolved that in my mind once and for all. Yes, I was right. So, travel, what was the other one you mentioned?
You mentioned that when you travel, you seek out senior centers.
Yeah, Mary and I, when we traveled, whether it was small towns or large, we went to other senior centers. This is when I was still heavily involved here. I wanted to see what programs they had, what kind of Taj Mahals they had built, and that sort of thing. And so we visited them, learned about their hours and their programs, and I always came back and told the people here that, man, you've got it good. There's nothing like the breadth of opportunities here. And I mentioned that when Trina and I went before City Council talking about our annual donation from them or some of the townships. I kept bringing that up, that not everybody realized what a gem the senior center was. So
That's a great perspective to be able to share that. You mentioned Kiwanis, so tell us about your involvement with that.
So I'd known John Knox for some years at that time. We were 5:30 a.m. residents of Westside Gym and Fitness Center. There were a group of half a dozen of us used to go there Monday through Friday at 5:30 in the morning, a lot earlier. I got there at 5:30. And for some years, John nagged at me that I should join Kiwanis. And I don't know, at some point I relented and did, and I guess that was maybe around 2012 or something. I raised my hand a lot in the several-year period. But I joined, and it's been very rewarding. Right off the bat, I was introduced to, 30, 35 new people in the community that I didn't know, and it was all part of this plan of becoming a Chelseaite. Became very involved there. Did my 2-year stint as president there, still on the board. I'm currently the board secretary, but more importantly, I buy the supplies for the Kiwanis concession trailer. So when you go down and have your knockwurst, it's one of 2,000 that I bought back from the knockwurst supply store over near Utica.
Raise a hand, who's had one of those? Multiple. Let me just pause for a second. Does anyone have a question that they are motivated to ask Jim or been thinking about? Now is the time to do that. If you do, or if you think of it later, raise your hand and we can certainly come back to it.
Where's the heckling you promised?
That's a good question.
We're building up.
Okay.
What gives you optimism for the future, the world, those younger than us and older than us? How do you look at the future and you're obviously a very optimistic gentleman. How do you bring that into your life from the world?
So, one of the focuses of the Senior Center for the last few years has been intergenerational programs. And indeed, the garden was the perfect example of that, but it's only one of many such interactions. One of the things I used to focus on with the garden was that most grandparents, the only kids they knew were their grandkids. Most little kids, the only older people they knew were their grandparents. And I thought it was really good for both sides to be forced together to interact with people they didn't know. Older people that the little kids didn't know, little kids that the seniors didn't know. I just thought that was a really good thing. I still do, and I still have many, or some intergenerational connections. 2 months ago, I was interviewed by the high school English AP class. Some of you did that as well. And I met 4 of the nicest young men who asked interesting questions. One even asked me, he said, "You've been married 55 years?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How do you get girls?" But they were, I said, "I don't know, it's been 55 years since I tried it." But it was a reminder that there are many more good young people out there than the ones you hear about on the news. And I've been struck all along, even when my sons were growing up, and the friends they had, and as they matriculated into adulthood, the lives they built for themselves. Every generation, in my opinion, is better than the one they follow. And I hold that fact in my mind a a lot. So, and when I go to the high school and interact with these kids, it's a reminder that, yep, there are many more great kids than there are not so great ones. So that's my hope for the future. So,
Good question. How about the advice you gave to the high school kids? That you said,
so I said, I don't know, they asked me what advice would I give to them, and I said, all of you have a moral compass. I suspect, I hope it's pointed in the right direction most of the time, particularly after you leave high school and leave home. You're going to face a lot of challenges, a lot of new situations that are going to challenge that compass. And it's important for you to not lose sight of that compass. You know, you can do crazy things, and part of that, those few years after high school, that's what it's for, getting some of that out of your system, I think. And the hope there is that you don't do anything that you can't forget about easily a week or two later. You can't do something that's going to permanently affect you. So have a good time, but don't do anything stupid. That was the advice I always gave my sons when they walked out of the house. So
that's good. So you were nominated and awarded Citizen of the Year back in 2017 as a result of probably everything we've talked about so far.
okay.
Or do you recall that event? Was there something special that you remember them highlighting that you accomplished that year?
I don't know. It was very rewarding to be added to that list of Chelseaites. And I think at that point, maybe it was the first time I allowed myself to think, okay, I've attained my goal of, in retirement, of becoming a local. I don't know, standing up there together with John Mann, it was fun. You know, I actually, even to this day, I don't know who nominated me exactly or what the basis of the nomination was, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I gave a talk on volunteerism, the importance of volunteerism that night. Maybe I put everybody to sleep, I don't know, but it seemed like a perfect opportunity to have to beat the drums for volunteering. So,
Well, this is what I'm talking about when I see you around, but when I hear the stories of what you have done for the community, it goes so far, and it's very motivating to see what you've accomplished in really a short amount of time. I'm going to read something that will probably get me into big trouble when I read it, and maybe others. But Jim is a big cook, as we've all heard today, and in retirement, he has dove in even further. And according to him, at one point he asked his wife, Mary, can you imagine this meeting? How about if I take it off your hands?
Dream come true.
Is he the sexiest man alive? I mean, there's so much great stuff that you've talked about, but I mean, I have to say that there's one thing I hang on to is you lifting that off Mary is, I know it's fun for you, but how great to take ownership.
Mary retired before I did, and any number of times she made it apparent, or it's not apparent, she told me directly that I was not to screw up her retirement. She had a very nice routine, and me being home all the time should not upset that. So I didn't know how to counterbalance that. But indeed, the closest thing to I have to a hobby, because I don't have any other real hobbies, is cooking. And amazingly, I don't mind meal planning, and I don't mind grocery shopping. So I offered to take all three of those off her hands in retirement. And I can't tell when she goes and tells people that she's a kept woman. I don't know whether that's a compliment or not, but I take it that way. So.
It says a lot about you. that you do that. I want to just run through a few things that some of your friends have shared with me about you. You're a good person to run difficult things by. You are tactful, you're composed, you're calm. You know, there's one other thing that someone mentioned to me that you asked, I think when you were president of the senior center, you asked candidates that were interviewing to be executive director, something about sympathy and empathy. And I don't recall exactly how that was phrased.
So indeed, when we were interviewing candidates to replace Trent, I asked each candidate to explain to me the difference between sympathy and empathy. And I wasn't looking for what the dictionary said. I just wanted to see what it meant to them, because I thought that would tell me a lot about the right person to lead the senior center. And that was the question. That was about the only question I asked of each candidate. I actually used that again. We were interviewing candidates for the CEO of Silver Maples, and I asked the same question to all 10 finalists. What's the difference between sympathy and empathy? Because I thought, again, it had a big relevance to the resident community there at Silver Maples. Got some good answers, got some not good ones. So that helped me a lot in making my own decision there.
It's such a thoughtful question that when it was told to me, I actually had to stop and think about it. And how did you come up with that? How did you even think to ask that?
Wisdom of old age, I don't know.
Well done.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
We're closing up, and I wonder if there's any message or things that I haven't asked you, or maybe a message that you want to share with people.
I don't know. I guess I'd go back to this fellow's question about hope for the future. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, progressive, liberal Democrat, I suppose. And I get very frustrated with some of the things that are going on right now. And even in my downest moments about all of the things that are happening, I still have faith and hope that things are going to be better, because on balance, the next generation is smarter than the one they follow. So, I don't know. That's indeed the way I think about almost everything. So,
That's good perspective, and it's nice to hear it coming from you.
Yeah, one last comment. When in raising our sons, I wanted to turn them out in the world with common sense and a conscience. And they both have it. So that whole phase of my life is, in my mind, a job well done. If I pat myself on the back, they both have common sense, they both have conscience. So,
You check the boxes.
yep.
I think they have empathy too.
Yeah.
But they do empathy.
I think so.
Well, Jim, it has been great to get to know you on a deeper level and share your story with so many people. Thank you for being my guest today, and let's thank Jim for his time today. Not more questions, right? That was a great question. Thank you, Jim. How'd you do? How do you feel, man?
Good enough.
Yeah, I think so too. John?
Just one short question. I was, I think you're a special guy. And I think Mary's a special person. You guys have been together for a long time. I was just wondering if there's something you could share with us about Mary that we may not all know, other than the fact that she's taking care of the grounds out at the farm property and the gardening and all, but obviously she's a special person too.
So Mary's probably told at least some of you about our beginnings. She had a couple of bank accounts She had a real job. She had a car. And I had golf clubs. And she questions why she made the decision she did. For me, it was very apparent why I made the decision that I did. I think also, and I'm pretty sure I've never said this to anyone before, when I graduated from college, I was not yet a mature adult. Mary helped me become one. And I don't know whether it was just, we buying a house or having more responsibility or being married or whatever. She developed my sense of responsibility that I'm pretty sure I didn't have for the first while that we knew each other. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice. Hi, Charlotte.
So, thanks for coming. I hope I didn't let you down with boring stories.
Indeed, you were great.
So it's funny, I see Linda Malash regularly at Anytime Fitness now in the morning. And she's one of the more enthusiastic people in the community, for sure. And for a long time she'll go, Jim, how was today? And I was never like Gary Munson said, best day ever.
Yeah.
I always just said, it's okay. Good enough, or, adequate. And she's finally come over to my side and sees the wisdom in setting the bar low every day. So that every day's okay. That if if you're hoping for best day ever, man, you're gonna be disappointed. So now it's a sort of standing joke. How's your weekend? It was good enough. How's yours? She said, it was adequate.